I'm Rosemary Killen. I'm the PI of Leader, and I'll be talking about the case for integrated discussion of lunar environmental protection. This talk really evolved from a discussion group that I initiated with my Leader survey group. It started out with a few people from Leader, and we accreted a few people as time went on. Heather Graham is an astrobiologist, and Esther Beltran is actually a medical scientist, and Carly Peters, you all know. So did I skip one or? Yeah. The reason we started this discussion group was because we recognized that there may very well be some conflict or upcoming conflict between science investigations that scientists are interested in and exploration. So we recognize that scientists want to use the moon for science, but our suggestions, or whatever I say, is just recommendations, and they're subject to change as knowledge increases. But our goal of this group is to make environmental impact assessments for various activities, and we want to understand the degree of contamination for various processes. And I wanted to say that I've learned a lot about what different scientists are interested in preserving, especially since Heather Graham joined the group, who is an astrobiologist, and I learned a lot from her. So what motivates people? People are motivated by different things. Some people are motivated by money and prestige. But we don't know what the monetary value is of the moon. We really don't know. And we can't answer that question on a decadal time scale. But what motivates scientists? We're motivated by the desire to understand the universe, its origin, and its ultimate fate. This is very different from maybe what other people are motivated by. So culture wars had a very different connotation when I was in school than it may have now. But the term two cultures refers to a failure of scientists and humanists to comprehend the content, nature, and implications of each other's intellectual activities. And there was a lecture given by Charles Percy Snow back in 1959 called The Two Cultures and the Scientific Revolution. And when I was in high school, this was actually required reading. I'm not sure exactly why, but it has a lot to say about the scientific worldview that maybe clash with other worldviews. So what is the value of the moon for science? Some examples, and this is totally not inclusive, are polar volatiles. We know that the polar volatiles hold clues to the origin of the Earth-Moon system. We want to use the moon as a quiet base for radio science. We're interested in metabolites and the fate of biological or even prebiotic material. How did life begin? Would it survive on the moon? Did it survive on the moon for a while? We want to know how long it takes to build up water deposits on the moon. And we want to know what the contaminants are. We know there are contaminants in the lunar polar cold traps. So what are these potential conflicts? Do we trade ISRU for unlocking the knowledge of the history of the solar system? It is a big if. But for instance, look at the biological potential versus ISRU. So does ISRU destroy our ability to determine the origins of the Earth-Moon system, origins in life? Where's the water? We don't really know where it is. And does it come in a purity that makes it extractable? We know that both water and cyanide and mercury are sequestered at the poles. The question is it possible to purify the water? And will Viper determine how pure the water is? So the other question is, can humans enter a region without doing harm? And what's the cost of human-induced contamination? So can a figure of merit be calculated in a statistical sense for a given action, including economic and social concerns? So we must plan to avoid depleting non-renewable resources and to avoid contaminating them. For instance, we require 1,800 tons of LOX and H2 to be mined per human Mars mission. This water is not a renewable resource. And there will be other demands on it, most of which may permit recycling, human consumption for lunar bases, lunar agriculture, and industrial processes. But tensions will ultimately arise between the need to preserve lunar polar environments for scientific study and the requirements for future space exploration and development. So when we started this discussion group, we didn't realize that there are other ongoing discussions on this topic. In fact, COSPAR has a concurrent meeting with a session entitled the Panel on Potentially Detrimental Activities in Space. And one question is, can the Outer Space Treaty or the Artemis Accords address non-mercantile questions? For example, in addition to scientific interest, there are ethical and spiritual concerns addressed by various indigenous groups. The Outer Space Treaty, the makers of the Outer Space Treaty did not want contention. So the result was to mandate consultation, and they employed a court to adjudicate violations. But the bottom line is there's no enforcement ability. And there are other communities besides the lunar science community with an interest in environmental protection of space. As you all know, the astronomical community was really up in arms when SpaceX's Starlink satellites brightened the dark skies. And they led to efforts funded by the NSF called SATCON 1 and SATCON 2 conferences in 2020 and 2021. So what we are recommending is environmental impact assessments should be undertaken for lunar activities. And I won't go into specifics because I don't have time, but the origin, character, and fragility of the lunar polar deposits in particular should be evaluated to update the planetary protection classification. And as of now, planetary protection only deals with biological material. So it's very outdated in our opinion. And organizations such as CERVI could play an important role in facilitating interdisciplinary discussions. So where do we go from here? Well, I do recommend that you take a look at the COSPAR, the abstracts for PEX1, establishing a framework for scientifically based stewardship of celestial bodies. And note that they said celestial bodies. This includes all celestial bodies and not just the moon. Chris McKay, whom many of you know, has a talk called Redefining Planetary Protection as Environmental Ethics. And there are many others, including Charles Mudd, A Legal Construct to Protect Space and Earth's Orbital Environment. He is particularly interested in the orbital environment. We did look into space law. There is space law starting back in 1958, but it's very limited. And I'll end there. I'm sure you all have feelings about this. It is, I mean, we're not against exploration. NESF is science and exploration. We simply recognize that there are activities such as radio science from the far side that may conflict with other uses of the far side, and we have to contend with that. Thank you for your time.